Hello everyone, welcome to this channel. In this lesson, you are going to solve this question I have on the board. So the question says, determine the resultant of the four forces acting on this plane here. Okay, so we have this plane here, and then we have a system of forces acting on the plane. We have the thrust force, which is 8 kilonewtons. We have the lift force, which is 24 kilonewtons. We have the weight force, which is 22 kilonewtons. And then we have the drag force. Okay, so we are to determine the resultant of these four forces acting on the plane. So let's look at how you are going to do this. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is to resolve these two forces, that's the lift force and then the thrust force, into their various components. Okay, the lift force makes an angle of 5 degrees with the y-axis, and then this also makes an angle of 10 degrees with the negative x-axis. Okay, directly opposite angles, so we always have 10 degrees here also. Okay, so now let's resolve these two forces into their various components. Okay, so for the lift force, we are going to have the y component in this direction, and then we have the s component also here. So let's name this as FLY and then FLX. Okay, and then for the thrust force also, we are going to have this to be the x component. So let's name this FTX. Okay, then let's name the y component. Let's name it here FCY. Okay, so let's find the component. Okay, starting with the lift force. So let's take cosine of this angle here. So we have cosine of 5 degrees. Okay, that will be equal to what? The adjacent side over the hypotenuse. So this is now the adjacent. So I'm going to have FLY over what? The hypotenuse, which is about 24 kilonewtons. So 24. So I'm going to have FLY to be equal to 24 cosine of what? 5 degrees, right? Okay, so we are going to have the x component to be FLX. Okay, and then that will also be what? 24 sine 5 degrees. Okay, so that's for the lift force. Okay, let's take note of this. Okay, so now let's do the same for the thrust force. Okay. Okay, so for the thrust force also, let's find the x component and then the y component. So let's take cosine of this angle here. So cosine of 10 degrees, okay, will be equal to the adjacent side, which is what? FTX over what? Hypotenuse, which is what? 8 kilonewtons. So I'm going to have FTX to be equal to what? 8 cos 10. But don't forget, it is pointing in the negative x-axis direction, so it's going to be what? Negative. And you're going to have FTY also to be equal to what? 8 sine 10 degrees. Okay, that will be positive because it is pointing in the positive y-axis direction. So now we'll be able to resolve these two forces into their various components. Okay, so as a result of that, we can go ahead and then sum all the forces in the x-axis direction and then all the forces in the y-axis direction. Then we used to find the components of what? The resultant force. Then we take the magnitude so that we can get the magnitude of what? The resultant force. Then from there we find the angle that the resultant force will make with what? The positive x-axis. So now let's look at the summation of the forces. So first of all, let's look at some of the forces in the x-axis direction. So for the forces in the x-axis direction, we have this drag force here, which is 3 kilonewtons, and then it is acting in the positive x-axis direction. So that's about 3 kilonewtons. And then let's look at the next force in the x-axis direction. We have FLX, which is also positive, so plus what? FLX. Okay. And then FTX is pointing in the negative direction, right? So let's take note of that. So for now, let me just write, we made the value negative here. So let me just write plus FTX. for now. Okay, let me just write this here. Okay, so let's find the sum of these forces. So you're going to have 3 plus, let's substitute the values. You have FLS to be what? 24 sine what? 5 degrees, right? And then FCX is what? Minus 8 cos 10. So let's write it. Let's write that minus 8 cos 10 degrees. Let's see what you are going to get. So we have 3 plus 24 sine 5 degrees minus 8 cos 10 degrees. Okay, so this will give us some of the forces in the x-axis direction towards minus 2.787 kilonewtons. Okay, so let's do the same for the some of the forces in the y-axis direction. Okay, so for the sum of forces in the y-axis direction, we have FLY, right? Okay, plus the weight force plus W. Okay, and then you have the y component of this, so that was FCY. K plus FTY. So let's do the substitution. So we have FLY to be 24 cos 5. We know that was positive, right? So 24 cos 5 degrees. And then the weight force will be negative because it is pointing downwards. So you're going to have minus 22 kilonewtons. And then FTY will also be positive because it is pointing upwards. So that's 8 sine 10 degrees. So plus 8 sine 10 degrees. Now let's find the value for that. So you have 24 cosine of 5 degrees minus 22 plus 8 sine of 10 degrees. So this will give us a value of what? 3.298 kilonewton. Okay, so that would be the value for the y component. Okay, now let's look at something here. We will have to find the resultant of what? The components that we just found. So let's look at that. So we are finding the magnitude of what the resultant force. Okay. So for that value, we are going to have the square root of 2.787 squared. Okay. Plus 3.298 squared. Okay, so let's see what you are going to get for that value. We have the square root of 2.787 squared plus 3.298 squared. Okay, that gives us a value of 4.318 kilonewtons. So that will be the magnitude of what the resultant force. So I've been asked to find the angle that it makes with the positive x-axis. Okay, so let's look at something here. This is my positive x-axis. This is my y. Okay, so now the x component is negative, and then the y component is what? It's positive. That means the resultant force will be here, right? So it is going to be in the direction like this. So we have the x component to be negative, and then the y component to be what? Positive, right? So this will be the, let's say, Rx, and then Ry here. Okay, so now I want to find the angle it makes with what? The positive x-axis, okay? Which will be this angle here, let's name it as alpha. Okay, so this is the angle that we want to find. Okay, so how do we do that? Okay, so let's name this angle here, say theta. Okay, so first of all, let's find theta. So we're going to have tan theta to be equal to on the opposite side or the adjacent. So that's what? Ry over what? Rx, right? So theta will be equal to the tan inverse of what? Ry over what? Rx, right? So now let's find theta. So theta will be equal to the tan inverse of Ry, which is what? 0.298 over Rx, which is what? Minus 2.787. So let's see what I'm going to get for theta. So we have tan inverse of 0.298 divided by minus 2.787. So that gives us a value of minus 49.8 degrees. Okay, so we have theta to be what? 49.8 degrees. Okay, so now that we know theta, we can subtract it from what 180 to get what alpha, right? So alpha will be equal to 180 minus what theta, right? So which will be equal to 180 minus what 49.8 degrees. So let's see. So let's have 180 minus 49.8 degrees. So that gives us a value of 130.2 degrees. So that will be the angle that the resultant source. Okay. I will make it what the positive x axis. So that's all for this question. And this is how to go about what this type of questions. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please kindly subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and also like the video. See you soon.